climbs off all by itself. It does it itself. Okay?
Yeah, you're right there with me though.
Every time I open the hangar door to go flying, I realize that I'm one of the lucky guys doing something that I dreamt of as a kid.
little-known fact that for 1 week every summer, Whitman Regional Airport in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, becomes the busiest airport on the face of the earth in terms of flight operations. That's because the airport is home to the largest annual aviation event in the Western Hemisphere, the Experimental Aircraft Association's EAA AirVenture Oshkosh. If it flies, it's here. Each year, as many as 10,000 aircraft descend on this place. The airplanes are usually the stars of the show, but not this year. This year, the American aviation community has decided to use its largest event and its biggest megaphone to simply and sincerely say thank you to America's military veterans. As a result, thousands of veterans and their families are here. Jim Sursely from Florida returned from his service in Vietnam, a triple amputee.
Well, very fond memories of growing up in Rochester, Minnesota. Great town, great place to be a kid. Spent a lot of time playing Little League baseball, basketball, football, all those kind of things. Had a large family. Always looked forward to Thanksgiving dinners, Christmases together, that type of thing, and just sharing our life together. Well, I joined the Army to be a wheeled vehicle mechanic, to work on Jeeps and trucks. The second advanced individual training I took at Fort Sill was for self-propelled tracks and howitzers, tanks and armored personnel carriers, to do the maintenance work on those. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't much of a garrison soldier. It wasn't what I joined the Army to do. I felt like I wanted to make a stronger contribution than what I was doing with the 24th Infantry Division in Germany. And because of that, I went down and talked to the first sergeant and said, Top, I'd like to volunteer to go to Vietnam. I've given this a lot of thought. I've talked to a lot of the guys that are in the unit that have come back from Vietnam, and it's truly something I think I want to do.
Jim Sursely served as a mechanic and machine gunner on an armored personnel carrier with the 17th Armored Cavalry, 196th Light Infantry of the Americal Division. After 4 months in country, his leadership qualities brought him a promotion to vehicle commander and squad leader.
I was honored to be selected to have that position. I enjoyed what I was doing, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to spend any more tours in Vietnam with what we were experiencing at that time. I did truly enjoy the military and love the life.
10 months into Sursley's tour, everything changed for him.
And it was a routine day like many others that we had a daily operation, search and clear, sweeping villages to make sure that they were clean of either NVA or Viet Cong, looking for weapons, that type of thing. And as it got on towards evening, we were looking to pick a night logger position where we could set up for the night, stay there overnight, and then continue operations the next morning. When I came off the track, I went out to get some equipment on the perimeter of the area we set up on and stepped on a landmine. Turned out to be estimated at about 25 pounds of TNT. It traumatically amputated both of my legs and my left arm. I got on the dust-off helicopter and went to the hospital just about like you see me now. The amazing thing about what happened that day was it was an all-powder explosion. There was no shrapnel to it whatsoever. It was not contained or encased in metal. That ball of flame cauterized my arteries and kept me from bleeding to death. Never lost another drop of blood from the explosion on, and laid there on my back while the medic worked on me and never lost consciousness. Actually carried on a conversation with our medic before the dust-off helicopter got there. I don't remember much of the helicopter flight from the explosion on. I remember getting to the 95th Evac Hospital when I first got there. It was a very quiet day. There was no need to triage me because they had plenty of staff available to work on me. I came in and out of consciousness during that 3-day period of time while I was there because I had troops from my outfit came up to visit, and I remember the conversations I had with them. Nobody came up and felt sorry for you. I mean, even 24, 48 hours after my injury, I actually had guys come up and say, "Sursely, you look like crap," you know. I mean, that's just the way Vietnam veterans treated each other. That was the nicest greeting you could ever get if they addressed you in that manner. So just the fact that they were there to come and visit, know that you were severely injured and you were going to move on to someplace else was a real heartfelt expression on their part, and it was taken that way too.
We're hit on by the number 3 engine back here, and there's a gas tank in there, caught fire, and Steve King, the pilot, is telling us to bail out, the plane is going down. I was hooked up to the electrical supply for my electrically heated suit, and I had my headset on, so I had to disconnect those things. I got down here on this little deck, which is right under the pilot's seats here above. And I started to debate with myself about what I was going to do. We'd been given the bailout order, and I was thinking it over, but you only didn't have much time to do that. And you're going to do what? You're going to jump out now and let myself fall forward out this way. The plane blew up. One of the gunners was killed, but the rest of us were out of there. We were scattered. The people jumped out at various times, and as I said, 2 guys landed in the wrong place, fell into the hands of civilians who killed them. And Miller, the pilot, co-pilot, was shot to death with his parachute. I just landed in the spot where it happened to be a suburban area right across the street from a military hospital, and I could see the German soldiers leaning out the window. They're watching me come down.
That was nice.
I get down. Now what you were supposed to do, you're supposed to hide your parachute. Well, so I hid my parachute. They're all watching me. And 2 soldiers drive up in a car, and they had their pistols out, and I put my hands up. And war was over for me at that point. We were there at the Great Escape Camp for 6 months. I got there 3 months after the Great Escape occurred. So there was talk about it, but we didn't know it by that name. All we knew, though, was they shot 50 officers for trying to escape. And there was no way to get out because, as the Great Escape proved, the only 3 guys out of the 76 that got out of the tunnel in the Great Escape escaped and got away, and they were Europeans, every one of them, 2 Norwegians and a Dutchman. I'm glad that I had a chance to fight for my country. I'm glad that I took the chances that I did. I was a foolish kid. I wanted to fly. I wanted to be in combat. I changed my mind when I got there. And as I realized that the enemy is shooting back at you with real bullets. But the point is, I think that I'm glad for what I was able to do. I would do it again.
When they were just 19 years old, Don Casey and Jack Sinise met in U.S. Army Air Corps Navigator School in Pyote, Texas. They were deployed to Europe together with the 379th Bomb Group in February of 1944. When Jack Sinise was removed from his airplane to be trained as a lead navigator, Don Casey took his place. On June 18, 1944, Don was on a mission deep into Germany. It was his 2nd mission in Jack's airplane and his 28th combat mission overall. Soon after leaving the target area, Don's plane was shot down and he and 4 of his crewmates became prisoners of war in Germany. Jack Sinise is the uncle of actor-director Gary Sinise. Jack completed 30 combat missions over Europe as a navigator in a B-17 Flying Fortress. Gary has been a strong supporter of veterans' causes, and his Lieutenant Dan Band has performed in USO shows at military bases all over the world. EAA Air Venture, North America's largest aviation gathering. Friends since Navigator School, Jack Sinise and Don Casey traveled together to Oshkosh.
I'm really glad that Don became a part of this because he was a big part. And as far as our time in the service and so forth. So I'm really glad that he came along, even though he blames me for his little escapade.
You have to understand that navigators got no respect flying combat. We were the Rodney Dangerfields of the air crew because nobody knew what we did. We just sat there with our thinking caps on and we figured it all out.
For the nearly 500,000 attendees of this granddaddy of all air shows, it's a chance to say thank you to all of those who have served in harm's way. For the veterans and their families, it was a week of celebration, recognition, and remembrance.
It means a lot. I don't. It's hard to explain. It's in your heart, but to see all the veterans and think about all those that can't be here. So I sure appreciate everything they're doing for the rest of us that are left.
In 1953, a small group of aviation enthusiasts met in Hales Corners, Wisconsin. Under the leadership of Paul Poberezny, they formed the Experimental Aircraft Association to promote designing, building, and flying their own aircraft. Today, EAA boasts 150,000 members in more than 1,000 local chapters around the world. Over the years, the organization has expanded its mission to include antiques, classics, warbirds, aerobatic aircraft, ultralights, helicopters, and contemporary manufactured aircraft.
Our core audience are the craftsman audience, people that build and restore their own airplanes, but also we engage all pilots, people that fly all types of airplanes, and of course the enthusiasts. And within the context of people who fly airplanes are those who preserve the heritage of the military, the airplanes that preserved our freedom through all the different years from World War II to Korea and Vietnam and so forth. So their motto is keep them flying. And of course that's very important, but within that context it's also to remember the people that were an important part of in terms of designing, maintaining them, and of course the pilots who flew them in conflict and battle. And for many of our veterans from World War II, they're not going to be with us much longer. And it's very self-satisfying to know that they know how much we appreciate what they've done.
Although the United States entered the First World War just 6 months before it ended, that war claimed the lives of nearly 120,000 American servicemen and women. An unthinkable 204,000 Americans were wounded in that conflict. In the aftermath of the war, the nation struggled with, and often failed to meet, the needs of its disabled veterans.
Well, the Disabled American Veterans were chartered by Congress back in the 1920s, and the need was identified by a group of people who decided to start the DAV because World War I veterans' needs and problems were not being addressed by the government. And so it's just moved through history, through the World War II veterans right up to the present time today. The DAV has 270 National Service Officers, in 67 offices throughout the United States and Puerto Rico, where all you have to do is call them on the phone, stop into that office. Those individuals are going to help you with your specific needs for a claim for benefits to make sure you get everything you so rightly deserve based on your service to our country. Obviously, the country has become more aware of our veterans and more aware of reaching out and saying thank you to those that serve, whether it be the current day veteran or veterans in general. And so to come here and be a part of this, be a part of last night's celebration of Salute to Veterans, from listening to a World War II guy, a Tuskegee Airman, myself from Vietnam, people from Desert Storm, from Iraq and Afghanistan, and flyers and ground soldiers and everything else. I mean, it's an incredible outpouring of feeling and emotion for this air show to say to our veterans, we want to salute you, we want to say thank you, and I couldn't be more pleased to be a part of it and represent the DAV at this event.
One of the most visible representatives of the DAV at the Oshkosh Veterans Tribute was Panchito, a meticulously restored North American B-25J Mitchell bomber owned by Larry Kelly. Since 2003, Panchito has been flying to air shows around the United States in service to disabled veterans as the centerpiece of the Disabled American Veterans Outreach Program.
All the time we're here, we're going to be telling the message of what the DAV does for disabled veterans. And then we're going to be flying in the air show, which gives us, the announcer to the crowds, 500,000 people, during the air shows. Friday night, the concert, Gary Sinise is coming out here again, getting the name, the recognition of the DAV out to the entire audience, the air show audience, this blinding flash of the obvious audience that we needed to be reaching out to with the Aviation Outreach Program.
Another little known fact, every year at this event, visitors will see the largest collection of World War II aircraft on one airfield since that war ended. The Warbirds are a huge attraction. B-25s like Larry Kelly's are superstars among these aviation and history enthusiasts. The North American B-25 Mitchell medium bomber first achieved fame in April of 1942. It was 4 months after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor brought the United States into World War II. Colonel James Doolittle led 16 B-25s on a bombing raid to Japan. Launched from the aircraft carrier Hornet, the Doolittle raid shattered the Japanese belief in their island's invulnerability, and it gave a much-needed boost to American morale. It made the B-25 an American defense icon. The B-25 was named for General Billy Mitchell, the visionary who proved the value of aerial bombing and strategic air power. It is the only American military aircraft named after a person. Ordered by the Army in 1939, the B-25 went straight from the drawing board to production. Modifications were made on the production line or at field stations around the world. The B-25 served in every theater of World War II, and it continued to serve with many foreign forces over a 40-year span. Larry Kelly's Panchito is a B-25J, the last production model. The original Panchito served with the 41st Bomb Group in the Central Pacific in World War II, hitting targets in southern Japan and eastern China. A solid-nose version of the B-25J was built for strafing ground targets. Armed with 3,000 pounds of bombs, 8 rockets, 10 forward-firing machine guns, and a 75mm cannon, B-25 sank thousands of tons of Japanese Navy and merchant shipping. Nearly 10,000 B-25s were built, including 4,300 J models. Today, more than 100 B-25s survive, most of them on static display in museums. About 45 B-25s are still airworthy. It takes huge amounts of time, resources, and dedication to restore a 60-year-old B-25, or any vintage airplane, and to keep it flying.
You know, I'm asked many times why I do this, why I spend so much time trying to keep this old vintage airplane flying. I guess I'm a student of history. I read a lot. I realized where the world is today and how it got here. It got here on the backs of the veterans, the American veteran. You know, and these airplanes, these airplanes were the tools of the trade. But the airplanes didn't win the wars. The airplanes didn't win the battles. It was the aviators. It was the men on the ground that kept them going. It was the aviators in the air that put themselves in harm's way day after day that won the wars. During World War II, if we had not had this total effort of putting me in, coach, regardless, we'd been in a different place today. So why do I do it? I have a tremendous respect for those veterans that put themselves in harm's way. I'm not a veteran. I'd like to try to think that I'm doing a little bit now to help with recognition of what veterans have done for this country and helping tell that story.
Without people like Larry Kelly, that story might never be told. These airplanes that defended the nation are as much a part of our heritage as our Civil War battlefields or our national parks. But there is no federal custodian of them. They are here because private individuals have salvaged and restored them. Their organization is also a part of the Experimental Aircraft Association. It is called the Warbirds of America, and it is the third sponsor of this Veterans Tribute. During World War II, America built 294,000 aircraft for the war. 21,000 were lost to training or ferrying accidents. 44,000 were lost in combat operations overseas. At the end of the war, nearly 120,000 U.S. military aircraft were declared surplus. 34,000 surplus aircraft, mostly trainers and transports, were sold to private or corporate owners at bargain prices. The vast majority, including nearly all of the fighters and bombers, were sold for scrap and melted down for their metals. Most of the surviving warbirds from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the Cold War are in museums, permanently grounded. But a small community of museums and private owners are restoring, maintaining, and flying these aircraft as examples of living history.
Keep them Flying is of the core of EAA Warbirds of America, to share these aircraft in their element, in flight, in front of people, flying in formations, flying in aerobatic routines, reenacting significant parts of history where people can feel that direct connection with the aircraft, with the pilot, with the sights and sounds of a warbird in flight.
These airplanes weren't designed to be flying now. These airplanes were designed to serve this country in the 1940s. Were designed to just basically a purpose. And here we are, 2010, they're still flying. And it's a tribute to those who have invested the time, the resources, and the love and the passion. If the private community, the private sector had not done this, these airplanes would be gone. What you'd have is a few airplanes preserved in National Air and Space Museum and other places. I think we're all fortunate that people are willing to do that, to preserve the legacy of an important part of our history, an important part of the aviation history.
In a very real sense, these aircraft have been sanctified by those who flew them in harm's way. 4 generations of Americans, literally millions of us, are connected to these airplanes through our fathers, our uncles, our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers, and our mothers and grandmothers who built them. In a sense, they are living heirlooms of our American family.
But the salute to veterans at Oshkosh was more than just warbirds.
The parade, the special tribute, the dedications, every day there was something that kept the theme visible and engaging to ensure that our messages are getting across. The audience that comes to Oshkosh gets it. They appreciate and understand what the military, what the veterans, what the people who sacrificed have done for this country, and appreciate their efforts on our behalf to preserve our freedom.
It is the intention of the AirVenture Oshkosh organizers to create a permanent memorial to veterans and their sacrifices. This week-long salute to veterans at Oshkosh included the dedication of a new exhibit space called Warbird Alley, where historically significant aircraft will be showcased every year. Major funding for Warbird Alley came from a donation from the Scott's Miracle Grow Company. Jim Hagedorn, chairman of the Scotts Company, is a former F-16 pilot, a Warbird owner, and a member of the Warbirds of America.
I wanted to be an airline pilot, really, to be honest. I thought the best way to become an airline pilot was to go to Embry-Riddle and fly cargo in the Air Force and then go work for the airlines. I always wanted a Mustang. You know, I remember when I was at Embry-Riddle always sort of dreaming someday I can have a P-51, and you know, we've been lucky in life, and the company's done well. You know, it's a very special airplane. It's I mean, it's been dinged a few times, but that's original metal there. It's one of the few Mustangs that's a real survivor.
These airplanes are national treasures, monuments to the men and women who built, maintained, and flew them, often in harm's way.
I think we look at them not only as monuments, but as living history. It's important to preserve the airplanes, to get them out in front of the public, so that we can tell the stories, so that the younger generation, they don't forget. If private individuals haven't stepped up to the plate to preserve the airplanes, no one else could have. The government couldn't have. Other organizations are taxed for resources. But we give our hats off and our thanks to those that have preserved the airplanes and have really spent a lot of time and effort and money to make it happen.
At the north end of Scott's Warbird Alley is a very special place, the Eagle Plaza, and at its center, a monument that pays tribute to all who served in America's armed forces.
The monument is meant to be a gathering point. It is the point between Warbird headquarters and Scott's Warbird Alley. And so it's a place where people stop and you see the dedication to those that serve. You see the key words of honor, duty, country. It has it all there. And within the context of the different services that have represented this country on a global basis.
What happens here is super important. And so to help them put some money into building up this area, which for a lot of people who come here, they want to come to the Warbird area. You know, if you talk to people who come here, mostly they believe big time in America, people who come to Oshkosh. And so it's a great group of people, and to give them an opportunity to salute the flag and veterans is important. And we're just happy to help.
It was a milestone year for another flying immortal as well, the 75th anniversary of the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress. 4 of the mighty bombers came to Oshkosh to join the salute to veterans. And what better celebrants than 2 comrades in arms who flew the bombers over war-torn Europe nearly 70 years ago. In 1934, the U.S. Army Air Corps announced a competition for a multi-engine heavy bomber to replace its aging fleet of biplane bombers. The Boeing Aircraft Company entered the competition with the Model 299, which first flew on 28 July 1935. It was a make-or-break effort for the struggling aircraft company. Despite some tough competition, Boeing's Model 299 won the contract. Early B-17s were built in small numbers and used mainly for promotional flights, including several that set coast-to-coast speed records. After December 1941, when the United States entered World War II, B-17 production increased rapidly with constant improvements and refinements. When the Model 299 was first unveiled in 1934, a newspaper reporter noticed its multiple machine guns and said, "Why, it's like a flying fortress." Boeing liked the name, and so did the public. The Army Air Corps' other heavy bomber, the B-24 Liberator, built by Consolidated Aircraft Corporation, was faster, carried a larger bomb load, and was built in greater numbers than the Boeing B-17. But for the public and for many in the military, it was the flying fortress that best symbolized American air power and military might. The B-17's sleek and graceful design helped win the hearts of the public. It was also known for its ability to absorb battle damage and still bring its crews home. In all, nearly 13,000 B-17s were built during World War II. Today, about 50 survive, and only 15 are actively flying. 4 of those 15 airworthy survivors came to Oshkosh to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the B-17 and to join in the salute to veterans. For former B-17 navigators Don Casey and Jack Sinise, Oshkosh was not just a reunion of 2 old friends and comrades in arms. It also reunited them with the B-17.
On our 5th mission, we hadn't had a lot of problems before that. 5th mission, sitting here, bombardier sitting up where Scott is. All of a sudden I hear clock. And I look, the bombardier comes flying off his seat and landed right here on his back. I didn't know what happened to him, you know. What happened was a piece of flak come through the plastic and it made that sound, clock. And the bombardier's name was Charlie. Charlie, you know, he'd laying there. He said, okay, I think I'm all right, But I mean, it was kind of, then I knew they were shooting at us. You know, the little things when I just look at that, I just remember that again. And that sound, I never forget that clock. I remembered that.
A World War II airfield encampment recreated at Oshkosh brought back memories still vivid after more than 65 years. Younger aviation enthusiasts were eager to hear about the veterans' experience.
You had to bail out, yes.
I had to bail out, yes.
You did, not me.
No, I took his place, actually, that day.
Oh, really?
But yeah. So I finally forgave him after all these years for letting me take his place.
I wasn't there that day.
No, I was in the Great Escape Camp for 6 months, and then they moved us to another camp, and finally liberated by General Patton. I saw him in person.
So this kind of brings back some memories, seeing this stuff.
And look at the chest pack parachute here.
Yep.
You know, when I wore the chest pack for a long time. Then I had this one mission where we got shot up and dropped out of the formation. And when I got back from that mission, I said, no more chest pack. I don't want to be looking around, where the hell is it?
Did you get a seat
I
pack then?
I got a backpack.
Oh, backpack.
So I changed my parachute, and I wore it in and out. From then, every mission I wore the parachute and my armored flak vest from takeoff to landing.
For Jack and Don, the climax was a flight on Thunderbird, a beautifully restored aircraft painted in the colors of a B-17 that flew 112 bombing missions in Europe. It takes dedication, hours of hard work, and eye-watering amounts of money to maintain and fly this old warbird. The Lone Star Flight Museum of Galveston, Texas, keeps her flying as a living memorial to the men and women of the 8th Air Force in World War II.
I haven't been up in that thing since 1944.
Well,
it's looking pretty good, isn't it?
Yes, I'm still amazed that these things still fly.
For this trip, they chose the relative comfort of the radio compartment located behind the bomb bay.
Look at that. They didn't have insulation at that time. I mean, you said the bare metal. And everything rattled. You couldn't hear yourself think. And it was cold. Because it was nothing like this.
The bomb bay looks very small.
I know, it doesn't.
You can see all the way up to the flight deck there, too, right?
Yeah.
This is really something. Really something. You know, the plane again. 66 years later. I can't believe it. Here we go, Jack. I can't believe it, Jack.
Can't believe it. You will after we're done. You got to begin it again.
Think of all the times that navigators like Jack and I flew in the nose compartment up ahead. I spite of the fact that that was the most dangerous place on the airplane. We landed, they brought us in and they debriefed us, and we would say, well, we saw flak over here, saw fighters at this point, and then they'd give us shots of whiskey to drink to calm us down, because we were still pretty wound up tightly. And so I always had my shot of whiskey, and anybody else that didn't take theirs, I'd drink theirs too. To be a fellow navigator with Jack and to be able to share with him the ground experience there at flying. We weren't the same plane, but at least we came back, we flew missions, we came back from missions, we shared our experiences, and we tried to keep ourselves busy so that we didn't go crazy between missions, because the mission flying was tremendously stressful, and you had to say, well, it's not going to happen to me, I'm going to keep going. And that's the way we survived the war. So when I didn't come back that day, and Jack is there waiting for the crews to come back, and we didn't come back, I'd asked him when I finally got back from the war, Jack, what was on your mind that day when we didn't come back? And he said, well, I had to be philosophical about it, and he did.
Somebody comes in the barracks and said, Steve King and the boys got shot down. It isn't that you break down and cry or anything like that, because you've seen it happen, day after day or week after week before, and it happens. But you're just kind of at a loss. But at the same time, could have been me.
Jim Sursely arrived home from Vietnam as a triple amputee. From the hospital in Japan, he was transferred to a hospital in Aurora, Colorado.
When I got there and you start to get healthier and you start to eat whole foods and you kind of are aware of what's going on in the world, is where you have time now to sort of think about what's really going on. You might be going to physical therapy or occupational therapy. That's going to take care of the physical needs. The psychological needs you still struggled with. Why did this happen to me? Have I been a bad person somewhere in my life? Is this a path that God chose for me? And I'll be honest with you, I struggled with that for probably 5 or 6 weeks. I prayed a lot, but I was praying for all the wrong things. I was praying for that burning bush or that bolt of lightning that was going to show me a vivid picture of what the future had in store for me. That doesn't happen in real life. What I ended up having to do was I surrendered. My prayers to God were ones that said, I'm going to go do my physical therapy, my occupational therapy. I'm going to do everything that the Army requires of me while I'm here in the hospital. And what the future has in store for me, I'm going to leave up to God. And when I did that and I surrendered, life was just much more simple from that day forward. I didn't have to worry about anything. It removed that burden from me to be constantly searching for what's next. What does life have in store for me? And it's amazing. It's like you flipped an electrical switch. The whole world changed from that point going forward.
Back home in Rochester, Minnesota, Sursely pushed himself to stay active. He enrolled in junior college. He helped to form a new chapter of the Disabled American Veterans in Rochester. A job offer took him to Florida, where he eventually built a successful career selling real estate.
I moved to Florida and said, you know what, I need to look up that DAV chapter. There's got to be a couple of them around here in Central Florida. I did that, and I've got 41 years of membership now in the Disabled American Veterans.
Sursely worked for many years as a DAV chapter officer and state officer. He was invited to become a national officer in 1999 and served as national commander of the DAV in 2004-2005 and as chairman of the board of the DAV in 2006. Vietnam veterans came home to an America that was sharply divided, that wanted to forget. many vets still bear the emotional scars of that homecoming.
But I think one of the positive things that's come out of that is all of us Vietnam-era veterans have swore to one another that we will never let that happen to another group of veterans. And that's why it's such a heartfelt feeling for us to be out there today and be in charge of these veteran service organizations and welcome the young men and women coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan and make sure that their service is never forgotten. What we share together is that camaraderie of being veterans. It doesn't make any difference, just like the gentleman today that got on the honor flight if they're 89 or 90 years of age, or if you're 62 years of age like me from Vietnam, there's a bond that we veterans have that just says, I'm willing to do anything to make life a little bit easier for these guys. I'm always going to reach out and say thank you to them. It doesn't matter what era of service you had. A lot of people ask me, do I regret anything that I've ever done? Do I regret joining the Army? Do I regret volunteering for Vietnam? And I don't. And if I had the opportunity to do it all over again, I wouldn't change one single thing. I'm absolutely proud of everything that I did. I wouldn't change even the being injured because I think it's made me a better person. So all that experience has brought me from where I was then to where I am today, and I think I'm a better person, a better American, and just love of my country would be my message to all of our viewers.
As a nation, we are, it seems, much more aware of the sacrifices of our men and women in arms and appreciative of them than perhaps at any time since World War II. We honor them with holidays, hometown celebrations, medals, citations, and hugs. Still, this Oshkosh tribute was singular. First, it was aviation-centered. 53 years of the event's origins and history dictated that. When you talk to these people who love airplanes, who love to fly, it isn't long before they mention the freedom of flight. They have a shared reverence for the word, as well they and all of us should. When the aviation world decided to show its gratitude to Jim Sursely, Jack Sinise, Don Casey, and the thousands of other veterans who came here, it was as sincere and heartfelt as it gets. It was a case of those who risked it all in defense of liberty being thanked by hundreds of thousands of people who celebrate it daily on freedom's wings.
Veterans in general, have made great sacrifices for America to guarantee our freedom. But the disabled veterans, the ones that got wounded or disabled in some manner, paid a tremendous price for us in America.
I went to Walter Reed and got to see some of the same folks that had been injured, that had lost legs, and that had horrible injuries as a result of their tours. To tie it all together makes me, it humbles me and makes me so proud to be an American.